This podcast is brought to you by the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Well, the latest rage in finance are SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies, firms designed to help another go public. It helps the companies go around the traditional IPO and the roadshow to raise funding. In these cases, the SPACs may already have that funding set up and is looking for the idea to attach to it. For those who are still not really sure about what this is and how it has an impact on finance and investing, the Wharton School will be hosting a new LinkedIn Live event titled Understanding SPACs. Wharton finance professor Nick Rusinoff will be part of that discussion, and he joins us with a preview of the event. Nick, great to talk to you again. Hope you're doing well.
Hi, good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me here. And, of course, I'm more than happy to talk about this event. Very exciting, very sort of a new thing for me.
It's obviously a very timely topic when you're talking about how the want of SPACs to kind of be in this marketplace has really risen over the last, well, especially over the last year or so.
That's right, absolutely. We saw an incredible boom. Of course, last year was an extraordinary year in financial markets for a variety of reasons. But one of them was that we saw this incredible boom in new company listings, and the vast majority of them have been in the form of these SPACs, these special purpose acquisition companies. They're really not companies themselves. They're funding vehicles, but they're raised, as you said, in order to take typically young private companies public. And again, we've seen an incredible boom in both the SPAC listings, meaning the capital raising from investors, and the growing number of deals where these SPACs do merge with a private company, taking it public. And as you said, a lot of investors are kind of puzzled by what is this phenomenon, and you can hear very, very different views. Some people think it's a great thing and great for companies and great for investors. Others are not so sure, and many commentators talk about kind of a bubble type behavior that we observe in the space. Of course, we see frothiness in a variety of financial markets these days, especially starting kind of late last year and now. And the question is the SPAC boom kind of a manifestation of this froth in the markets, or is it something that is potentially more sort of important as a potentially kind of a staying feature of financial markets? And that's something that we will discuss tomorrow.
So what has been the main difference why we're seeing this want to use a SPAC instead of the traditional IPO as much?
Well, I think there are two things. One that SPAC gives you is speed. It takes much less time for the company to get its public listing and get the capital when it's doing a deal with a SPAC, because the SPAC already has a pool of money raised from investors, and then it brings the kind of additional funding from institutional investors in the form of so-called PIPEs, private investment in public equity. But because the SPAC already has the public listing, it's just about doing this deal between the company and the SPAC. And then once the deal is commenced, the company is public and its shares are traded, and kind of everything that has to be accomplished as part of the IPO process. The IPO process itself is a bit more of a lengthy process from the standpoint of the company, and maybe it's VC funders. There's a book building process where investment bankers are much more heavily involved, and ultimately there's uncertainty about how much money you will be able to raise in the IPO. Whereas again, with a SPAC, you know how much money the SPAC has, and really it's the discussion with the institutional investors about how much money they will contribute to the deal. That's issue number one. Number two, and this is kind of the more controversial issue that is being discussed by regulators in particular, is the fact that unlike in an IPO, in a SPAC deal, the company does not really have to provide sort of solid evidence of its projected profitability. It can just provide these projections that are in a way non-binding in any way, right? And so that gives the companies that are earlier stage in terms of their development, or pre-revenue firms that might be capital hungry and might have great ideas, some of them, but gives them the opportunity to raise capital in a way that a standard IPO would not allow them, just because they don't have enough to show for at this stage.
Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
No. We'll discuss kind of the pros and cons of these two points. Whether both of them are really kind of there to stay, and as I said, regulators are worried about this projection. The notion whether that's kind of okay for companies to go public at this stage, and we'll see whether the regulators, in fact, crack down on this going forward.
What makes, from a company's perspective, what makes, in your mind, the SPAC route the right choice?
Well, I think part of it, as I said, is the speed. It gets you to the public listing faster, and the other part of it is, honestly, the timing. Right now, the markets are buoyant. There is, again, lots of evidence of high valuations, maybe a bit of froth. That's something that companies like when they can raise money. They like to raise money in markets where they can get more for their shares. And I think a lot of the firms would like to take advantage of that and tap into this ample liquidity in financial markets before it goes away, either if the Fed starts raising rates, if there's signs of inflation, or any sort of bout of uncertainty that could bring that fraud down. So from the standpoint of firms that are looking to go public, this is a really good time to do it. And the IPO process, as I said, may be too slow and too costly for many of these companies to take advantage of the sample market liquidity that we have at the moment. You can sort of think of it as being opportunistic, but again, if you are trying to fund your investment, in a lot of cases, this is investment in innovative technologies, potentially breakthrough technologies of the future. These companies need a lot of capital. The capital is available. The question is how to put that capital in the hands of the company founders. And the SPAC route seems to be, at the moment, a very attractive route for many of them.
Do you expect that there is no reason to believe that the interest in using the SPAC wouldn't continue at the rate that it currently is, or even at a higher rate in the months and years ahead?
Well, that is something that we will debate tomorrow, and there's going to be three of us there. Joao Gomes, our finance department chair, will moderate, and my colleague Tamar Drexler and I will debate this question. So I don't want to give necessarily too strong of a preview, at least of my view. But I think there is a sense in which this kind of financial innovation, even though the whole idea of SPAC is not new, this financial innovation has some staying power. The question is, how is the SPAC itself designed? There's some variation in terms of how much of the sort of the share of the pie the different actors capture, and this is going to matter, I think, quite a bit, especially when the sort of the froth in the markets starts deflating. And the other issue that I mentioned also is the regulators and how they look upon this issue of projections, and whether that is something that is going to be allowed to go forward, and if it's not, whether that is going to hurt the SPAC ecosystem. So this is very much an open question, and again, looking forward to an exciting debate and exchange that we will have tomorrow, and of course the questions that we will get from the LinkedIn audience. Hopefully it'll be informative for everyone.
Yeah, it obviously, as we said, it becomes an important time to do a discussion like this with kind of the activity that we've seen, and obviously in the scope of connection with consumers and people that have interest in this. Doing it via LinkedIn is a prime way to be able to connect with more and more people.
Absolutely. This is, as I said, a new platform for me. I mean, I've been on LinkedIn for a while, but never really kind of presented to the public through it. But I think it's a great way to reach a potentially much wider audience than we normally do in our educational programs, but it's also a more potentially and kind of informative vehicle than just guys giving interviews on TV, where it's kind of oftentimes reduced to the soundbite. Not everybody is Wharton Business Radio, of course, and does not necessarily give us the full flexibility of expounding our ideas and views. So I think the LinkedIn Live is definitely a great way to go.
What's the one or two things that you think is the most important for maybe someone who is not as up on the idea of the SPAC, just so that they have a better understanding, really from a beginner's kind of mindset moving forward?
So as part of our session tomorrow, we will give a bit of an overview of how SPACs work and what is the basic mechanics of it, and what is the idea behind it, before we can jump into maybe debating the pros and cons. So that is I think a good sort of starting point. There is no, as far as I know, kind of as of yet, well sort of formulated, written up textbook treatment of SPACs, because it is such a new concept. We have featured in some of our executive education programs some coverage of analysis of SPACs. Again, Itamar Drexler, and in fact did this for the Wharton on the Market series that I hosted a few months ago. That we talked about this when we were getting started on that. But we're hoping to maybe eventually put out more materials that would be widely accessible to the public as well.
Nick, greatly appreciate your time. Wish you all the best with this event, and look forward to talking to you again in the near future.
Thanks a lot, Dan. It was great to be here as always, and
yes.
Looking forward to the event, and looking forward to being back on your show at some point in the future, as you said. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Nick Rusinoff, Wharton Finance Professor. To keep engaged with Wharton Business Daily and other Wharton School shows, visit businessradio.wharton.upenn.edu.